Hi everyone, good to see you again. We are at the lecture number 4. How have you enjoyed this class? We reviewed the first part of the counseling theories. We talked about the psychodynamic and humanistic approach at the last class. And today we will talk about the behavioral and cognitive approach. So we will finish the covering 4 major theories. But you know what? In counseling program in master level, we learn the counseling theory over the whole semester. But we are talking about these theories on only two lectures. So I have to kind of summarize. So I pretty encourage you to read our textbook very carefully. And if you have any question, if you are not clarified, if you're confused about the different theories, please ask me a question through the website. So I will be happy to reply to your questions. Okay, so today we will talk about the second part of the counseling theory. There are 4 different objectives for this class. The first one, explain key concept and therapeutic process of behavioral approach. So this will be the third major theory. The fourth one is cognitive approach. So we will talk about the key concept and therapeutic process of the 2 major approaches. And also we will talk about some other theories as well in behavioral perspective here. 2 things, multimodal therapy by Lazarus and also reality therapy by William Glasser. And also another cognitive approach it's called Beck's cognitive therapy. And finally, we also want to wrap up this counseling theory by reviewing some current theoretical trend. So we'll talk about some integrative approach and also solution-focused approach. And finally, we'll talk about multicultural counseling. So the behavioral approach compared to the psychodynamic and existential/humanistic approach, I explained this approach very focused on specific behavioral change. So the view of human nature is they regard a person as a learner of behavior. And 3 areas of development, I put down 3 major figures in behaviorism. The first one is a classical conditioning by Pavlov. The second one is operant conditioning by Skinner. And the third person is a social learning by Bandura. Let me explain each one by one here. In classical conditioning here, it's based on a stimulus and response framework. For example, this is stimulus and response. Response will be our behavior. So it assumes that we can change our behavior by changing stimulus. Do you remember Pavlov's experiments on a dog? You know, we experimented the dog by providing the food and by changing and manipulating stimulus. Do you remember that in your high school? So when we provided food, that will be stimulus, and then dog will begin to the mouth watering, saliva. That is a kind of natural. So, you know, if we provide food and they will automatically begin to the mouth watering. However, he identified that if we provide the bell sound, for example, together, so food and bell, they are connected. for a long time by repetition, and even without food, only bell sound will cause the saliva. So that means by manipulating, by changing stimulus, we change their reaction, their response, their behavior. That is related in counseling as well. For example, if I respond to your question very well, if I welcome you in cyber class very much, like all kinds of my teaching, okay? My teaching methodology, very encouraging message and kind and warm message, and very, very frequent checking and lots of comments. And you may have very positive feelings about this teaching. You will enjoy this teaching. And if this teaching methodology is connected with me, and without this will be causing your positive kind of reaction to me because it was connected. So we want to apply this framework to the counseling by exploring this Pavlov's classical conditioning. So anyway, to sum up, we can change the client's behavior by changing the stimulus. The second one is operant conditioning. It's different because in Pavlov theory, if I put down again, we can change the response by manipulating stimulus, but Skinner had a different thought. We can change response by changing consequences of their behavior. We can provide positive consequence after a certain behavior. For example, if we praise a certain behavior, if we provide positive consequences, and then this behavior will be increased. However, if we provide and if we present a negative consequences to a certain behavior, and that behavior will be decreased. If we reprimand, if we give punishment, and then that behavior will be decreased. So this is the opposite way. So Pavlov focused on this side, and Skinner focused on the after behavior. And social learning by Bandra has a different perspective. This is more manipulation of stimulus and also manipulation of consequence. So this is more the counselors and teachers, the intervention. However, in Bandra's perspective, he believed our behavior, the client is a kind of active observer. They observe a certain behavior and they evaluate, and then they try to imitate a certain behavior. So more active learning perspective compared to the Pavlov and Skinner. But anyway, Bandra also focused on changing a client behavior by providing a role model or vicarious experience types of thing. So anyway, I wanted to explain three different perspectives on behavior. And so basic characteristics of behaviorism is scientific method. They conducted so many different experiments to identify the principles of behavior. Basic characteristics of behavioral approach. The first one is scientific method. So behaviorists conducted so many different experiments to identify the principles of behaviorism. And also, it focused on current problem. If we recall the characteristics of psychodynamic, it really focuses on the past experience. It's pretty deterministic point of view. However, in behavior approach, they don't really look on the past experience. They only focus on current problem and future the behavior. And also it emphasized on specific action. It doesn't talk about our thought. It doesn't talk about our feeling. It only talks about our specific behavior. So these are the key concepts of behavioral approach. And therapeutic process is in behavioral perspective, behaviorists view a client as a learner. So even though the client has a problem, they believe they can change their behavior by learning better behavior, by learning alternative behavior, by learning a new behavior. So the therapeutic goal of this approach is to learn the new behavior in order to help the client to learn new behavior. The therapist's role is to analyze behavior. If you look at this, the small table, it's a kind of behavior analysis chart. Let's think about this particular case. If we have a student who are frequently off task, and so out of seat, and it's hard to sit on a chair, and also talk out, and not really obedient, and some other, we can describe some certain the behavior here, and also this is the observed behavior, and this part is also a kind of different setting and condition. Large group lecture, small group, independent work, and types of thing. So we can analyze a particular student behavior by using this analysis table. So if a student showed off task in transition from first class and second class, we can check here. And the student was better in large group lecture, but still showed out of seat and non-compliant. And the client is showing better behavior in small group. And like this one. So if we summarize this type of behavior analysis chart, it will give us some ideas. So for example, if we analyze this result, the client is showing more problems in transition period. And we see some hierarchy in large group lecture in the middle, and small group, the client showed better. So based on this analysis, we can design a behavioral intervention. We try to help the client in small group or independent work. If we have a better, if we have a result like this, we try to make him to work in small group setting or individual independent work setting. We can provide more intervention in transition. So this type of behavior analysis is one of the counselor's role. And techniques and operant conditioning techniques. I explained what the operant conditioning by Skinner. If I apply this one again, we can change a client's behavior by changing consequences. That was the main idea of operant conditioning, for example. This is a positive consequences, and this is negative consequences. And we can give, or we can present this consequences, and we can take out, or we can withhold. So after a certain behavior, if we want to increase a certain behavior, we can provide positive consequences. That is positive reinforcement. That is, we can provide the sticker, or we can provide candy, and we can praise, and they try to increase a certain behavior in order to get more candy and sticker. That is positive reinforcement. Okay, you did a good job, and you are showing 2 good behavior today, so I'm not going to give you a homework. That is this one. It's negative reinforcement. Because we took it out, we took the negative consequences. In this case, negative will be a homework that the client doesn't want to have. So the client will try to keep showing good behavior in order not to have homework. Okay? And also, if we want to decrease a certain behavior, we can give negative consequences. That will be punishment. Okay, so they try to decrease a certain behavior in order to avoid the punishment. We can also decrease their behavior by taking out the positive consequences. For example, timeout. You're not doing well this class, so please stay away. You have to stay away and stand in the hallway for 10 minutes. The student wants to get involved in the group activity, but you cannot because you didn't do a good job. So we want to take away from the positive consequences. So these are the 4 types of intervention. It's based on operant conditioning. It's manipulating the consequences. And relaxation training, try to client get better by practicing some muscle training and even breathing, and that is related to relaxation training. That is one of the behavioral approach. And systematic desensitization, that is a typical approach to the test anxiety. If I use this one again, systematic desensitization is the counselor develop a hierarchy of anxiety. So here is the low anxiety level. This is low, lowest, this is highest level of anxiety. So the first one, lowest anxiety level, for example, test anxiety. Okay, the teacher announced the midterm exam date. That was the lowest. And so that was the stage 1. Stage 2, what would be the next higher level of the anxiety? That will be about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the test, and 10 days before the test, and 1 week, and 3 days before, and on the test date, and right before. So counselor and client work together to develop the hierarchy, and they kind of imagine a certain situation, and then they try to use the relaxation training at the same time. So imagine level number 1 and try to breathe and muscle training. So get over the level 1 and try to overcome at the level 2. So that is more systematic desensitization training methodology in behavioral approach. Social skill training is, a typical approach to make friends or how to speak well in public, and it includes many different behavioral intervention in many social settings. And role play is another one. Let the client to experience in another person's perspective by participating in the role play or small drama or role rehearsal types of thing. So these are the behavior approach. It's more pretty scientific and focused on behavior. And next one is cognitive approach. It focuses on our thought and our belief. And they believe we have a potential for both rational and irrational belief. But they believe that our irrational belief, it causes our kind of the problems in our behavior. For example, we should go there. I must get grade A in this course. I ought to do this types of thing. That types of thing, the belief is called irrational belief in this perspective. For example, what grade you expect from this course by the end of this semester? In offline class, it's interesting to see the student reaction to the same grade. For example, let's think about the B+ grade. And some student, okay, they're okay. They expected B- or even C0, but they got B+, so they're happy. However, in the same situation, some students are so upset. Oh, I expected at least A0 and A or even A+, but I got only B+, so they're pretty mad at the grade. What's the difference? We have only the one stimulus, but their responses are so different because they have different belief. Because they had an expectation, the A-type student had an expectation to get a lower grade, but B-type student had an expectation to have the better grades. So there are different beliefs. That belief related with their different feeling, different reactions. So in particular, this type of student, they had, I must have better grade. That is a irrational belief that is related, is a negative feeling. So the Ellis, his approach is called rational emotive therapy or rational emotive behavior therapy. It's called ABCD theory framework. In this case, B+, the grade is activating event because it stimulates their reaction. And they have their own belief. That's B. And based on belief, they have a different consequences, different emotion. That's consequences. And D is the counselor's role. Why do you think you have to get A? So the counselor tried to dispute the client's irrational belief. That is the counselor's role. If you look at the therapist's function and role, the dispute is the counselor's major role. So when they work together with client, they try to they try to help the client to decrease self-defeating thought. That is irrational belief. And also increase self-enhancing thought. That is a rational belief. That is the counselor's role and also goal as well. And if you look at some techniques in cognitive approach, is the cognitive homework. So we can provide a client to a certain homework, like we can provide a certain frame. When you were angry, think about what really made you be angry. What was your thought? That will be. What was your feeling? So we can give them to fill out the form over the week, and then take the form to the counseling office, and we talked about their belief in their particular situation. And counselor try to dispute their irrational belief. And bibliotherapy, we can ask a client to read a certain book that are related with their situation. And we can also use a book to help to try to change the client's behavior, client's thought. And imagery exercise, we can also use their image to change their thought as well. And self-talk is our private talk in our mind, because our thought is related with our self-talk in our brain. So we try to change the self-talk as well. So these are the cognitive approach and behavior approach. In addition to this major cognitive and behavior approach, I encourage you to also learn about two different behavioral approach and cognitive one. So the first one, in the behavioral perspective, in the objective, I talked about the multimodal therapy. This is one of the behavioral. If you look at the textbook, it uses a framework. It's called the basic ID. So it's developed by the Arnold Lazarus. The B is a behavior, A is affect and sensation, and the imagery, cognition, and interpersonal relationship, and drug and biology. So in this perspective, it focuses on changing client behavior by using this framework. It's pretty comprehensive approach. So it's a pretty recent approach in behavioral perspective. And also another one is reality. Reality approach, reality therapy by William Glasser. This one also focuses on the behavior. It's called the WDEP system. So in this approach, they explore what do you want. So we ask client, what do you want? What do you want from our relationship, from the counseling? What have you done to change your behavior? What have you done so far to get what you want? How did it work? Was it working good or not? So we ask client to evaluate what they have done so far. And if they are not working well, we can ask them to develop another and better plan for changing their behavior. So WDEP system is another framework in reality, the therapy. So I ask you to read more into additional behavioral approach. And also, we talked about the cognitive approach by Albert Ellis, rational emotive, but also in the objective, I wanted to introduce some Beck's cognitive therapy. Well, if I compare Beck's cognitive therapy with the Albert Ellis's A, B, C, D, E, let's review here. A, B, C, D, E. This is by Ellis, rational emotive. Sometimes rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT or RET. Do you remember this one? Activating event like a grade, and they believe I have to get a good grade, and they're mad or angry. So the counselor dispute, and E is the effect of the counseling. But Beck has a different kind of idea. He believes that this kind of pattern, but he used a different term in his theory. In his theory, he used kind of schema. So we have a kind of structure of thought, and that one, it kind of distortion. So each person has a structure of thought, and when client encounter a certain situation, the schema cause a kind of distortion that is related to kind of irrational belief. If we compare two theories, for example, overgeneralization, we have a tendency to apply what we learned to the old situation, like overgeneralization, and then it is related automatic thought. Oh, I will be the failing again, this one. For example, if I get a lower grade in quiz number 1, and they may overgeneralize that result to the other quizzes, and then, oh, I'm not going to get good grade over the course. So that is automatic thought. So the back try to change this kind of the chain by changing the belief. So these you see some kind of similarity between two the theories, and because they use a little bit different term but very similar idea. So I wanted to introduce a different Beck's perspective. But anyway, Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, they also focus on changing their belief. They use a different term like irrational belief and schema distortion. But the major idea is how to change their thought and their cognition. So we reviewed the two major theories of behaviorism and cognitive perspective. The last slide, it shows the new trend right now is integrative approach. We talked about 4 different perspectives, but now most counselors are using not only one theories, but also some combinations of others. It's called integrative approach. Gerald Corey is one of the person who is famous for in this approach. So he tried to select a different theory based on the characteristics of client's problem. So now we know it's not only one approach, it's more pretty multiple approach. The second one is a brief and solution-focused approach. It's also a new approach and is getting more popularity right now. You know, psychodynamic and even other approach try to define the origin of the problem, what really made the problem. But in this approach, they don't really focus on the past experience and the problem or causes. They only focus on how can they get better. It's more solution focused. They try to stress the client's successful experience because they believe in their successful experience there is a clue to solve the problem. So that's another perspective, the current trend. The last one is multicultural approach. Well, multicultural approach is called as forces even in psychology. For example, psychodynamic, psychoanalysis, and behavioral and humanistic. These are the 3 major forces in psychology. And now multicultural approach is called as the next force in psychology. That means it's very major trend right now in psychology and counseling. In particular, the whole society in the United States is multicultural characteristic. So not only United States, but also we are also experiencing the increase, the diversity in our society in terms of ethnicity. We are looking at and so many different students from different countries. Not only ethnicity, but also we have different culture. We have different religion. We have different gender. We have different socioeconomic status. We have a different history of living in different region, different dialectic, a little bit different, language. So we are all multicultural beings. So multiculturalism is now infused in the counseling profession as well, and now it's another the current trend in counseling. So I wanted to introduce three major current trends in counseling. Okay, today we talked about another two major counseling theories, behaviorism and cognitive perspective, and also we reviewed some other related approach like multimodal and reality and Beck's cognitive. And finally, we looked at and some new trend in counseling from integrative perspective and solution-focused and multicultural approach. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video lecture. As I said, please be an active learner. So based on the video clip, please read the book again and try to be an independent learner. See you next time.